Okay, good evening once again. So my name is Eugene Adavere. I'll be your host for this evening. So bit of introduction. This is Design with You for those that are new to this weekly webinar. So what we hope to do is to bring designers from all spheres, um, experienced to talk about different topics we believe will be beneficial to the community of designers as a whole. So this week, we are hosting Derrick, a product designer at Yellow Card, to talk to us about articulating design decisions. So, Derrick, how this will run is for the next couple of minutes, the floor will be yours to share your thoughts. And afterwards, we'll give room for guests to basically ask their questions and then you respond. So, we hope that others will join in as well because we can't wait for them anymore. So the floor is yours now, Derek. Good evening.
Yes, hello. Good evening. Please confirm like you can hear me properly. Please, if you can hear me, just maybe drop a hi in the chat or just raise your hand or just something to signify everyone can hear me. All right. All right, cool. So thanks to Eugene for having me. My name is Derek. And I'm a product designer at Yellow Card. So I'll share my screen and just take you through just a couple of things that I've got prepared for the topic. Um, all right. Please confirm everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right. All right. Cool. Yeah. So once again, I'm Derek, product designer at Yellow Card, and I lead the Figma community in Accra, Ghana. So today we just want to go over more articulating design decisions. I feel this is one of the most important things designers do in their day-to-day work or in things they do in their workplace, because it's not enough to just design an interface and then move it to production. You need to get stakeholder buy-in, let your stakeholders understand what you've done, give them a reason why what you've done is the best solution to whatever problem that they brought to you, right? So sometimes designers, in their bid to bring work out, I've gotten a lot of complaints from designers that their stakeholders do not respect their opinions. Either probably the designer suggested something that, oh, I want us to do A, B, or C, and the stakeholders were like, no, we don't want you to do this, we want to go a different direction. Or it could be that the devs, this is what I get a lot of complaints about, that the devs are not the devs are always saying the design is not codable, or when you finish everything, the devs will say it's not feasible. And the last one is, all my clients always have something to change about the design. This is very frequent in especially freelance, where there's no more structure. So you end up presenting work and the client says, I want us to change this. Or the one that a lot of people dread the most, that my wife or my husband said she doesn't like this, so we have to change it. But I think with proper articulation of our work or proper explanation of some of the design decisions we made or some of the direction that we decided to take, some of these issues can be reduced. So this question will be to the room. Maybe if you get two people to answer, that will be very great. What makes a design good? Um, should I will we get volunteers, or I can Eugene, I can mention anyone's name? All right. I'll go with Benjamin. Benjamin first, then is it Fola Jomi? What makes a good or a design good? Wait, can everyone hear me? Or Benjamin can? All
I can
right.
hear you.
So,
Sorry,
all right.
I'm on trip, just listening. That's why I could not.
Oh,
I don't know.
okay, cool.
Yeah, my
Cool.
background is kind of
Cool. No
noisy.
problem. All right. Any volunteer? What makes a design good? All right.
I would say is solving the user's needs.
Okay.
Solving the user's problem. That's right. Yeah, that's one thing that makes a design good. Knox Pen, you had something to say?
Yeah, I think proper arrangements like alignments.
Yeah, so some of the visual elements or some of what comes together to make the visual or the design visually appealing. Cool. So alignment, maybe layout, all those things, fine. But then, so I think some other problems, what's when the design solves a problem, right? When the user accomplishes their goals. So the problem, the company might say, okay, our drop-off rate on our login screen is very low. So we want to improve the drop off, want to move it from, let's say, 40% to maybe 20%. Or you say, okay, when a user accomplishes their goal, so the user wants to send money from point A to point B. If the user is able to do that thing, then the user has accomplished their goal. That also makes a design good. But one thing that we normally skip, we might forget or we might not maybe take into consideration is when the stakeholder accepts the design, right? So the design might look good from a usability point of view. The design might look good in a visual sense of the word. A design might look good in usability. It might look good in accessibility. You might follow every UX rule or UX law there is, but at the end of the day, if the stakeholder does not accept it, the stakeholder does not see it as good, right? So a lot of the time we focus a lot on solving the user's problem that we do not take the stakeholder into consideration, and we end up bringing the stakeholder at the end of the problem. So like I said, sometimes we focus a lot on the end users and we forget the need to satisfy the stakeholders too, because the stakeholders are the ones that who have to give the final say or final say on your work, right? So the stakeholder can be your line manager, the stakeholder might be the CEO, the stakeholder might be the head of finance, or whoever the work concerns, right? So meeting stakeholders should not be the last thing on your mind. If you want to get people to give you as much support on your work as possible, or you want to get the buy-in of stakeholders, you shouldn't wait till the end of your process before you consider the stakeholders too. So you need to bring them at the end. We'll talk more on how to handle stakeholder interest in your work soon. So yeah, your stakeholder is not only your line manager, right? So a lot of the time when we talk about stakeholders, um, the understanding that we get is, oh, CEO, marketing manager, maybe the head of design. But then your stakeholder is everybody whose work your work affects, right? So we have the CEO, which is obvious. Then we could have the front end engineer, we could have the back end engineer, we could have the head of finance, we could have the HR, we could have marketing, customer support. Everybody that your work is going to affect, you need to take them into consideration. Not only one person, or not only trying to please your boss, or not only trying to please just one side of the equation, right? So whatever work you do, if the CEO, whatever work you do, you need to take all these people into consideration, not just well the users. I know the user is very important in our work, but then before the product gets to the user, it has to go through all these people, right? It has to go through all these people. So, for instance, the customer service personnel, once the product goes out and people start having issues, the customer support person is the one that is going to face all those questions. So now, if your work is not good, you're going to put a lot of stress on the work of the customer support person, right? If your work is not very feasible in engineering perspective, you're going to give the back end engineer and then the front end engineer a lot of work to do, a lot of stress, right? So you have to keep in mind our work affects everyone, and we need to keep everybody in mind. So different stakeholders care about different things, which is very true. Not every stakeholder cares about how the design looks, right? Your engineer cares about how fast he can write the code for your work. Your backend engineer cares about how fast he or she will be able to implement whatever you've done, right? Your marketing personnel cares about how well they'll be able to market your product to the user. At the end of the day, a lot of the design processes is only you that cares about that, right? So you need to understand what every stakeholder wants or what every stakeholder wants inside your work, and then speak to that or have that in your mind whilst you're writing or whilst you're designing. Sorry. Right. So even though they may not have your level of experience of design, they might have opinions about it from the perspective of their work, because your work will definitely be affecting theirs. So the CEO might tell you that, oh, this button is not big enough. Your CEO might say this button is not big enough. How will customers see the button and then click to register? That's because the CEO is thinking about it from the revenue point of view, right? Your engineer might say, oh, this animation is very complex. That's because they are thinking of it from the implementation point of view, right? So we shouldn't just sit in a corner and then bring work to the stakeholders and say, okay, this is what I've done, accept it. No, we should need to take it from all the point of view. This might be difficult and this might sometimes hinder creativity a bit, but then it's one of the difficulties that we have to go through as designers. And this is not only about product design, this could be about any type of design. So we need to know, okay, different stakeholders have different, and it's fine because we can't have everybody thinking about the same thing in a stakeholder meeting or in whatever meeting that you are trying to have. So how do you put your thoughts forward, or how do you articulate your design decisions, right? So I think that's that's the main reason why we are here. So the first and most obvious things that I think a lot of us fail to do, having spoken to a lot of like designers that go for their first stakeholder meeting and then come back very angry, and you ask them, what preparations did you do for your meeting? And they're like, I just designed and I went through the flows. And yeah, but that's that's not enough presentation, because you are going into a meeting with people who probably are seeing the work for the first time, people who do not really understand design as much as you do, people who are waiting eagerly to jump onto the next call, people who maybe have only 30 minutes. So you need to prepare your meeting and be as apt as possible in whatever you deliver to them. The first thing that's, I think, people, or we need to press on a lot when we get into some of these meetings, is the problem we are trying to solve, right? Because when you go into a meeting and you do not set that basis, you do not let the people in the meeting or the stakeholders know that we are solving A, B, and C and D, people will start giving feedback on your work based on their own assumptions or based on what they feel you are trying to solve. So if you do a redesign of the landing page and then you take it into a meeting, you don't give any context that, okay, the problem you are solving is that customers are not able to see the sign up button. If you do not state the problem that you're trying to solve, the first feedback you're going to get is, oh, I don't like the color. And now the conversation has shifted from the problem you're trying to solve into a visual one. And now you've lost the audience from there because you didn't ground them, or you didn't let them know exactly what you're trying to solve with whatever design you've done, right? So the first thing I always let people know, always state the problem you're trying to solve, right? So you go into the meeting, enter, hi, this is the problem I'm trying to solve is users are not able to do 1, 2, and 3. And then everybody understands that this is where we have to give our feedback, or this is the angle that we are supposed to give our feedback from. The next one is, how is the user affected by this change, right? How is the user affected by this change? You want to give them an understanding of how this is going to affect either their business or how this is going to affect how the users relate to them, right? Because, like I said earlier, they might not have the same level of design expertise as you. Maybe they do, maybe they do not. But then you have to break down these things for them, for the stakeholders, so that they understand what is going on in your mind. So after you've done your user persona, you've done all your wireframe, all those things that you've done, and you come to the stakeholder meeting, you need to let them know first what exactly are you solving? Why are you calling us into this 30 minutes or this 1 hour meeting, how is it going to affect your customers? Are they going to lose customers? Are they going to gain more customers? Why this is the right thing to do, right? Because you don't want them to assume. Mind you, the last thing you want in a stakeholder meeting is for them to assume their own point. The moment they start assuming their own points, then the feedback starts coming from every angle, and then you lose them. All right. So set the tone for the meeting, let them understand exactly why you are there, and then you don't lose them at the beginning, right? So another thing, anticipate their reaction. You know the stakeholders that you are dealing with, you know who is going to be in the meeting. Sometimes maybe in the chance that there's a chance that you do not know who is going to be in the meeting, but then in the case you know who's going to the meeting, if you are going to meet the CEO, you are going to meet the devs, you are going to meet whoever, make sure whatever you prepare for that, whatever you prepare for that meeting speaks to their interest, right? So if you want to get the stakeholder buy-in, you need to speak to the interest of the stakeholders that are going to be there, right? So in order to prevent questions that are outside the scope of what you're trying to share, you need to speak to their interest, anticipate their reaction. You know your CEO doesn't like color blue. You know the last time you sent work and then it was rejected because of this and this reasons. So next time you are going into a meeting, even if your research tells you to use that, you should address that first, because it's something that you can anticipate, right? If you know the skill level of your devs are not that high, you should know the type of questions to anticipate, right? If maybe you can do so I've done this a couple of times where I went to Stack Overflow and then found the solutions to some issues, and then before I think it was in a freelance project, and before the devs could complain about how the screen is, they cannot build what, I sent them there.
Hello.
Hello, I think my mic. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
can hear you now.
Oh, okay. What's the last thing you heard me say? I think my
Overflow.
mic. Oh, Stack Overflow. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think my mic disconnected. All right, cool. So I was saying that there was a time on the freelance call that I anticipated certain questions from the devs, right, about some of the implementation, and I took it upon myself to actually search for some solutions to some of the interactions that I was doing, right, some of the micro interactions that I was doing, and I got some Stack Overflow links which solves that problem. And then when I went into the meeting and the devs raised that issue, I was like, oh yeah, I was even doing some research and I found the interaction, how to do it in Flutter and all that. And then that closed that problem. So as I was saying, if you are in a position to anticipate their reaction, it's a very good thing to do. But if not, that's also fine. You could still handle the rest of the points as I've mentioned here. And the last one is, well, bring alternatives, right? So another wonderful prep you can do for a stakeholder meeting is to bring alternatives. You don't want to go into a design review session or a stakeholder meeting with just one design, right? The danger of that is that the stakeholders will start comparing what they have seen elsewhere to what you have done, because you only have one thing. But then if you go into a stakeholder meeting with two variations or with three versions of your product, now they don't compare your design to what they've seen outside. They compare it to compare it among themselves, right? So now you have a higher chance of getting a stakeholder buy-in if you present them with alternatives rather than just one design. So if you go with only one design, they don't have anything to compare it to. So now they start making assumptions. And I mentioned earlier, the last thing you want stakeholders to do is to make assumptions of your work. Right? Once they start making assumptions, you end up, there's this called the CEO button, where the CEO start requesting features that might destroy your design or something. So always go with variations. If it's about 2 variations, try and go with variations, and then give an explanation or two. Okay, why this variation is this and why this variation is this also, so that they understand the choices they can make, right? And then at the end of the day, you have a higher chance of getting stakeholder buy-in when you have multiple variations, right? So another thing we can do to prep for a meeting is that, or to another thing we can do to properly explain ourselves, probably get stakeholder to understand what you are trying to do, is to allow stakeholders to talk, right? One thing designers are culprits of, or is to defend in quotes our work, right? So when somebody start giving feedback that you don't like, then you're like, but then you start interrupting the person, right? Just keep quiet, let the stakeholders talk, right? You need to know feedback is not personal attack. They are saying they do not like the work you have done and not you as a designer, right? So let them talk. Before you respond to any feedback that has been given to you, try to understand, right? Because the stakeholders are also looking at your work from a different point of view that you might not have understanding of, right? So before you can probably understand them, you need to keep quiet. I don't want to say shut up. You need to let them talk, allow the stakeholders to properly explain themselves. When they are done and you understand what they've said, then you can explain the reason why you took certain actions, right? But then if the feedback starts and they're like, and the feedback comes like, oh, this button is too green, I don't like the green button, instead of interrupting, just wait, let them keep talking. If you can ask them to give you more examples, that'll be perfect, because it will help you also understand what they are trying to mean. Now, once they are finished talking and then you understand whatever is going on, then you can explain yourselves better, or you can explain your thought process better. You can explain what you have done better. But if you go into a meeting with the mindset that, oh yeah, I'm the chief of design, I'm going to boss over this place, any feedback they give, I'm going to push back, that's not going to help you in the long run. Because if they tell you to redesign it, you have to redesign it, because that's where you are being paid, right? But then you need to understand it's a collaborative effort. So listen to the feedback that's coming. Don't take it as personal attack. And then you are not there to defend your work. That's why I defend this in quotes. You are there to get stakeholder buy-in, trying to get them to understand what you have done, right? If you get people to understand what you have done, you are your team will be in a better position to ship a good product. But then if you go there with the mindset that you're going to defend your work, it's be like secondary school, and you've done something bad, then you're in front of the disciplinary committee, right? So let them talk. So if the first thing we said was to prep before the meeting, next thing is let them talk. Don't go to a meeting trying to lord over everyone, because it's a design meeting. At least let the people talk, understand them before you move, right? We always have empathy towards users, but then we are culprits of not having empathy towards stakeholders. I don't know why that's I don't know why that's the case, but yeah. Then another thing we can do is to speak their language, right? To get them to properly understand you, you need to speak their language. You need to explain to them in a way that they would feel comfortable in engaging with, right? So what do they care about most? So I mentioned earlier, the CEO cares about revenue, cares about how good the product is doing, how users will perceive the product, and how many new users this product is going to bring them. So now speak to that. How is your design going to help users stay on the platform longer? How is your product going to help users refer other users to use your product, right? Speak to that, because that's what the CEO is interested in. If the engineers are there, speak to their interest, right? The engineer cares about how this is going to work. How many API calls are they going to make on this screen at the same time? How long the development time for the UI is going to be. Speak to that. If you are using or you are reusing components, if you are reusing component from previous design, mention it. Let the engineers know that, okay, this is a component we use in our previous design. Engineers are always happy when you reuse components, because that means they don't write new code, right? So if it's something you have included in your design. Highlight on those things. You're more likely to get their support if you speak to the things that they care about. If the customer support team is, I recently worked on a product for mainly the customer support team, and then one thing they always do was to export. They always export Excel list from the portal into their local PC and then upload to Google Drive. And the solution the engineers and I came up with is to export straight from the portal into Google Drive, and then they can share the link to Slack. And then when customers send emails, it should go straight to their Slack through the portal. And I highlighted on that when we were in the stakeholder meetings, and the customer support guys were so happy, right? So at that point, I had a better chance of getting my work accepted, right? Because I had highlighted on the things that the people care about the most. Right. So you could, in that meeting, you could have said, oh, this product, because of the way the experience we are doing, it will cut down the number of emails that the customer support team has to send. This is something that they'll be very happy about. Right. So speak their language. Do not just go there and then walk people through your design. You can walk them through the design that, okay, this is my home screen. When you click here, you go here. When you click here, you go here. When you click here, you go here. That's just a flow that you've taken the stakeholders through. And now they begin to make assumptions, right? But then after you're taking them through the flow, you need to explain to them how this is going to affect their work. Right. So how is this going to affect their work? Or this is going to cut down on the number of calls that come into customer support. Brilliant. This is going to get people to understand how to use the product better. The marketing guys will love you. This is going to improve or increase the amount of time the users spend in the app or in the website. This is going to make the CEO love you. So look at what their personal goals are for the project. And this, you find a lot of this in the product requirement specification that your product manager gives you. So the PRS, or the product requirement specification, is just a document that outlines the products, the vision for the products, some of the people in the team. It's a very detailed document for the product that's sometimes given to the designer to work with. So if you go through all that, you can understand the roles people are playing in that particular product or in the feature they are trying to ship, and then you speak to that particular goal, right? What do I already know they want or they don't want? This is also very key in order to get stakeholder buy-in, right? Like I mentioned, if your CEO doesn't like black buttons, and you should avoid that if you can. If not, you should also be able to explain why you use a black button. But then as you are presenting your work, all the stakeholders will be asking themselves, how does this make my work easier? Right. So here we need to understand that the design is not only about us, but it's going to affect other people's work. So we need to speak to this, or we need to present our design in a way that answers this question for the stakeholders. How does this design solve their work? How does this design solve their make their work easier? If they are having a problem in their side of the work, does your work solve their problem, or does your work make their work easier? Right. So the reason why they are stakeholders is because they are interested in it, and so you need to think about how they are going to benefit from whatever you are presenting. Right. So how do we do this? What I like to do is I like to think of my stakeholders as users, right? I don't like to think of my stakeholders as a different group that is outside my scope or the scope that I'm designing for. I like to think about stakeholders as users. So treat your stakeholders like users, because they deserve love too, right? As we are having empathy towards users, as we are finding out user goals, as we are finding out user needs, user wants, and all that, we need to understand that stakeholders also have goals, stakeholders also have wants and needs, right? So in order to present your design in a way that they would understand and they would accept, you need to take them from the beginning of your design throughout to the end. Don't just wait till the end and then you think about stakeholders, right? So this one thing that a lot of us dread the most. What happens when you don't get approval of your stakeholders, right? After you've done all these tricks and tips and all that, you have spoken to their interest. You have done everything. You've prayed, you fasted, and at the end of the day, you still didn't get stakeholder buy-in. What do? Right? I've seen some designers cry after a stakeholders meeting. I've seen it, I think, just once. I've seen it twice where a designer called me to cry because of stakeholder meeting. Yeah, but you don't need to cry. The first thing you need to do is postpone any decisions you make on your design, right? The fact that the stakeholder gives you a certain feedback at a meeting doesn't mean you should immediately commit to changing that design, right? Your work as a product designer is to first understand the feedback that is coming, break it down, and see how best to implement it in your design. You don't go into a meeting and then when you are giving feedback, you are like, okay, I'll change this, right? The moment you make that commitment, your stakeholders are going to judge you based on that. So the next time you go into a meeting, they are going to expect that thing that you promised to change. But then probably during your review or during your design iteration, you realize that that solution wasn't the best and you didn't go with it. But because you made that commitment, your stakeholders are going to expect that, right? So the first thing you need to do is postpone any decisions. If you are giving any feedback and have to change something, the best you can tell them is that you've taken the feedback and you are going to explore the feedback and then make iterations based on your learnings you get from whatever exploration you're going to do, right? So don't rush to commit to change anything. It's fair. It's okay to say that you don't know an answer to something, right? No one knows the answer to everything. It's fair to say you do not know the answer to something, that you do more research and then come up with the answer later. No one is going to penalize you for that, right? No one is paying you as a designer to have all the answers, right? So you do not need to know everything or you don't need to provide answers right now. If feedback comes, postpone any decisions you have to make until you understand it, you understand the problem properly, or you have explored various solutions to see what works best, right? Another thing to remember, our interest is in usability and effectiveness, right, of the application, not our own personal experiences or personal preferences, right? So the fact that you like the way the screen looks doesn't mean you should throw every feedback away. The fact that you sent it to your other designer and all the other designers are saying, oh, this is nice, this is fire, this is clean design. The fact that every other person likes it doesn't mean you should ignore what your stakeholder is saying, right? So your stakeholder also is thinking about usability from their point of view. They're also thinking about effectiveness from their point of view. So do not throw their feedback away because you feel you have satisfied your point of view or your interest in the feedback, or your interest in the product given you've gone to review or that you've sent for review, right? So another thing is to go and iterate, obviously, right? So the fact that you've done 20 iterations doesn't mean you can't do more iterations, right? The fact that you've done 20 iterations doesn't mean you can't do more iterations. Sometimes your best idea will come in iteration 25. Sometimes the best iteration will come in iteration 10 or iteration 5 or iteration 7. It doesn't matter the number of iterations you do, but then you need to explore more to see how better you can make the product or how better you can make that particular design, right? So once you get feedback, once your stakeholders do not accept what you have done, once your stakeholders once they don't accept the design that you've done and they ask you to go back and redo it, work on more iterations, right? No good designer has ever run away from iterations. Iteration is what make every designer better. Iterations are what make every designer produce their best work, right? So don't be afraid of iterations if you are asked to go back and redo the work. Sometimes it might be painful. Sometimes you might spend 20 days, you might spend 2 sprints on a project. Sometimes you might spend 1 month on a project, and then you go into a meeting and they tell you to redo it, right? It can be painful, but then who knows? Whatever you might do within that review period might be way better than what you submitted in the beginning, right? Then, so just to close this, knowing the goal is critical, but keep in mind that the goal can change, which is something that causes a lot of friction in stakeholder meetings, right? Because probably in the beginning of the sprint, the goal was to reach this number of customers, or the goal was to ship this product. And then when you went into the stakeholder meeting in the end of the sprint, they told you, oh, we want you to add this, we want you to remove this, we want you to do this. It's not because your work is bad. It might be because the goal has changed. And it's perfectly acceptable in work environments, right? So keep in mind that the fact that you were told something 2 sprints ago doesn't mean it's the same, and that might affect design decisions. So the goal might change, and if the goal change, it means the designer, or it means the design might also have to change, right? If we want buy-in from a stakeholder, we need to consider their values and their needs, which I mentioned earlier. So understand what the stakeholder wants, understand what the stakeholder needs, understand what the biases the stakeholder has. Like I said, the devs will care about functionality, how long it will take to build the UI. The CEO will care about how much revenue will come in. Different stakeholders care about different things. So you need to consider all of that when you are trying to share why you've done a certain design, where you're trying to explain to them why you've done some designs, right? So just to brush on just to go over some of what we've talked about today. In order to be in a position to articulate your designs properly, you need to prep well before the meetings, right? And we mentioned earlier, prepping for the meetings, that's what anticipates their reactions, right? Explain how the design is going to affect the user, right? Explain how it's going to affect revenue or whatever the product is related to, right? Explain how it's going to affect the various stakeholders, how it's going to affect engineering time. If you've used new components, mention to the engineers. If they are old components, mention to them. They'll be so happy to hear that. Listen well to feedback. Do not just jump to defend whatever you've done. Wait till the feedback hits, and then you respond to it after you've understood what exactly they're trying to say. You're not there to defend your work. You are there to just bring the stakeholders on board what you've done, right? Feedback is not personal attack. No one hates you. If they say they don't like the work, it's about the work. It's not about you as an individual. And understand feedback before you commit to changing your design, right? Sometimes I've had times where the stakeholders give some feedback, and then in the next meeting, they totally forgot about the feedback they gave, right? So if I had committed to making that change, it would have just been in vain, because sometimes the feedback they give is not really feedback that is going to hurt the design a lot, right? So do not commit to making changes at that point. Take all the feedback, go and sit in your corner, and then see what is best and what you have to leave out, right? Another thing we spoke about is to speak to stakeholders' interest, understand what the stakeholders want from your product, and then speak to those issues in stakeholder meetings. And then last thing we need to take into consideration, you do not know everything, right? You do not know everything. Don't go into the meeting expecting to answer every question, right? Of course, if you know the answer to every question, there's nothing stopping you. But then if you do not know the answer to a question, do not rush to give an answer that might not hit well, and then might sway your stakeholder meeting in ways that you might not want, right? So yeah, I think these are my views on articulating. These are some of the things I do when in stakeholder meetings, when I meet management, when I meet leadership, to take them through my work. These are some of the tips I've used, and they work well for me. They work well for me a lot, and yeah, I'm happy to share them with you. I know I've been talking a lot. Yeah, so if there are any questions, then Eugene, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I was taking notes. I got a DM that was saying you were dropping gems, like literally dropping gems. So right about now, we'll open the floor for questions. So if you have any questions, just let us know, either by raising your hand or dropping it as a message. Let's respond to that.
Can we get the slides? Okay, I'll drop the link in the. Or I'll send a link to Eugene. Is there a group you can share to, or
we send it out, with our newsletters. And when the video is being recorded, I equally add it to it as well.
Okay.
I'm dropping the link to his socials as well, so you can reach out to him after now. LinkedIn and Twitter.
All right, so please, any questions? If there's no questions, it's either I didn't explain myself well.
Okay, I have a question. Okay, Yusuf is raising his hand. To speak, Yusuf.
Yeah, good evening.
Hi.
Yeah, so my question is like, how do you manage like a group of stakeholders, like clients? Like, if you don't have just one client, you have like a group of them, like 10 of them with different opinions. This one is saying this, the other one is saying this. They're all saying different things, and they're just bombarding you with their opinions. Like, how do you kind of digest everything and work around that?
You mean in the same meeting?
Yeah, in the same meeting.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so a lot of the times when clients do this is because they want to feel they want to be part of the design process, right? And it's because a lot of the time, especially in freelancing, we hide in our rooms and then design and then come to the stakeholders to review the work, right? So they do that because they want to feel like they are part of the process. So what you can do is, if you see that a lot of feedback is being thrown at you at the same time, just take a pen and paper, right? If it's in person, take a pen and paper. If it's online, tell them that, okay, you are opening a Google Doc, and then share your screen, and then whatever feedback they give, start typing it. And what that will cause is that it will let them start speaking one at a time, right? So now, let's say you take a pen and paper and you are writing down, and let's say there are 5 of them, they can't all speak at the same time for you to write. So now it will go at a time. What this will cause is that it will cause them to really think about the feedback they are going to give you, right? If they are just throwing the feedback at you, they are not going to really think about it. They'll just be saying according to what they see, right? But then if, let's say, there are 5 and then one of them is talking, the other 4 will now be thinking about how to properly articulate their feedback to you, right? So now it will give them time to break it down, and then there will be some time that some of them will say, oh, this person has said what I wanted to say, or, oh, I've seen that, oh, you have already handled it here. I've seen, right? So that's one of the things I do. If I see that they're trying to overwhelm me, I take a pen and paper. Okay, I want to hear everybody. So now the first person should talk. You don't like A, B, and C, then I write it down. Second person, you don't like. Now, after you've taken all that feedback, now you realize the quality of feedback will be better than if they all bombard you with it at the same time. So now that you've gotten something significant to write on your paper, then you explain to them, or you ask them what they feel would work, right? You are not asking for design input, you're asking for functionality input, what they feel would work. So if they tell you that, oh, I don't think the user can see and understand the call to action and it will reduce our revenue and blah, 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 ask them, okay, what do you think would work here? And have you seen it work in other places before? Then some of the times, if you are lucky, they'll give you website links that, oh, I saw this thing here the last time. And it's going to help you in the long run because you are now getting more avenues for inspiration, right? So after you've done that, you receive all that feedback, then you tell them, oh, okay, I've seen what you want. I've gotten the feedback from everybody. So I'll work on this, this, and this. And I think with that, you are more likely to get actionable points or action items for the next meeting that you can work on before you meet them again. Right? Is that cool?
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much.
All right. I think Michael.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone.
Hi,
So
good evening.
I want to say I think the teaching today was brilliant. My first time attending this um, EU webinars, and I think it's a brilliant idea, right? Also, you really went deep into it. I'm actually reading a book by Tom Greaver on this, right? Because I'm a designer myself, and it's a bit difficult, and you're able to explain, properly. Yeah, just buzzword for saying you did well. But I would like you to maybe give an example. So I'm not saying go into details, but maybe just you can take out a design and maybe use us as the stakeholders. And because again, it's one thing to have a presentation like this,
Yeah.
but in there's still real life. So imagine when we resume tomorrow, Monday mornings, we be with these stakeholders. So if you can, open just like a feedback screen. It doesn't have to be too much, but just give us an example. It can be a case study, something, just a reference point. Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
All right. Let me see. Do I even still have this? Okay, let's. Okay, so just a practical view of. Sorry, this is my learning area, so it's a mess. Okay, let's do this. All right. All right, cool. Okay, so I'll take you through just the hero section of this, how I explained this one, right? Cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, okay, so this is just be brief. So this is the landing page of a job portal. So users will come here and try to search for a job because they're unemployed or they want to change their job and all that, right? So first thing, we have a very light blue background, right? Because blue is a very calming color. That is why I picked the color blue for this, right? And that's because users who would come here to look for a job are either desperate, they are desperate, or they want quick answers, or they want clarity on their careers and all that. So the quicker you calm them on your product, the better, right? That's why we have a very light blue in the background, a very calming color, and we have blue, which is like the standout color on the screen, right? The next thing to do to handle that mindset from the users is to have a smiling face on the landing page. So now they come here, they get the first thing to calm them down, which is the blue. Second thing is the face, right? Imagine you come here, you've just lost your job and you're looking for a job, and you come here and you see someone frowning. Imagine how that's going to affect you, right? It might be subtle, but then it's going to contribute to how you feel later on, right? Then the next thing you have is what these companies here, just to show some of the companies that you might encounter when you start searching for a job or when you get to the portal, right? So in case you come here and then you see Google, Netflix, Spotify, or some of these big tech companies, you're like, okay, cool. This is what I aspire to be, or this is where I aspire to work. So now you are in a supportive environment now, or you are in an environment that you feel is where you want to be, right? The next thing that we included here to handle the customer's mindset were these feedback cards here, right? So this is just to explain or just to give the customer an idea of what we want them to achieve in the future, right? So now feedback here, okay, you know what's interesting, blah, 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 feedback here, feedback here, feedback here. Now you are getting assurance on 4 different levels, right? And now this will give you more chance or a higher chance, or this will give the user a higher chance to sign up to whatever I want them to sign up, because we are giving them assurance in the feedback cards. We are giving them a calming face. We are giving them companies that they might want to work in. And we are giving them a blue background, which is very subtle, but also contributes in incremental ways, right? Another thing, or the last thing that I'll touch on the landing page here, would be the copy, right? The copy says find the most exciting startup jobs anywhere in the world, right? So what do people look for in a job nowadays? Remote work, and they want a job that has a very good work-life balance. So these are two key things that people look out for. That's why we have exciting and we have anywhere in the world. So once somebody reads this, they have in the back of their mind that I'm going to get a job not limited to my location, not limited to my country, right? A job that would give me the proper work-life balance I want. It should be exciting, right? So that's why we have this copy here. So this short, yeah, this was how I presented this.
Yeah. Actually, I was going to say, like, you were answering my questions, some of the questions I was going to ask, and it was brilliant.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about the logos. Why did you put the logos around? Because I've had that kind of question when they are presenting, and like, why did you throw this? Also, you explained the smiley face. Also, like the fact that you explain colors. One last question though is, why is the navigation like that? Just this.
Which one? The top here?
The top here.
You mean the text or the placement?
The placement. And why is it limited to just 3? Why didn't you increase it?
You don't want to overwhelm the customers too, right? You don't want to overwhelm the customers, because here on this landing page, you are the main group of people you are targeting are customers, right? But they're not only customers. You are targeting people who also want to post their job here, right? But then customers are where you get, or customers are the major part of your customer or your user base. So whilst this is catering to the customers, you want this to also cater to the people who are hiring and the startups, even though they are the smaller portion of your user base, right? And then the placement is just for this to be in the middle. I could have put it at the side here. It doesn't really make any difference in this context.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think you answered.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, please?
Did you do this animation with Figma though?
No. I can send you a link to where I got it from.
But you did this presentation on Figma, I believe.
Yep. Everything was done in Figma. I do all my presentations in Figma.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And you added the animation works, or are you allowed?
Yeah, it's a GIF.
Okay.
Makes sense. It's a GIF. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's all for me. Let me drop.
Right. Any other questions, please? All right, Eugene.
Okay, can you all hear me? I've been having bad internet for a while now.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, so that's all we could take for this evening. It's been recorded and will be uploaded on our channel in a little bit. Apologies because we've not been able to upload the recent ones, but tonight we should be having most of our most recent uploads up on our YouTube channel. So once again, Derrick, we really appreciate you for your time. You really explained this topic so well. We appreciate your time, and we'll be uploading this session soon. We hope to hear from you soon as well, because we can't have you just come in just once and just go. So thank you very much, Derrick.
Sure. I would always love to be back. Thank you so much for the opportunity to